On December 27th, 1983, in around midnight, there was a spectacular fire that occurred at 179 Rossay Avenue. It was the Fairweather's Garage, a facility that housed tire storage and many flammable fluids, including paint. It was described in the paper with the booming of the paint cans going off and with the tires and the black smoke coming out. It said it looked like a scene right out of Beirut. It was a very chaotic night. Part of the roof fell in. It was a very hectic night. Firefighter Bob Bouillet died of a heart attack just before that evening. So it was a very hectic, hazardous situation. Firefighter Kenny MacDonald was known for his rugged style and his very physical ability. Kenny was sitting on a 2.5-inch line. That would be 65 millimeters for those of lesser vintage. And anyway, Kenny was alerted by other firefighters to the fact that there were 2 firefighters running out of air and trapped in the building. Fred Gamblin and firefighter Bogey MacDonald were trying to get out, but they were caught between some glass and an ironclad door. Kenny, in true Kenny fashion, and if you could see him walk with tree stumps for legs, made his way over with an axe and beat his way through an ironclad door, a feat that very few people could ever accomplish. He freed them from their grave, and when they got out, the fire had been so hot that it had actually melted the webbing and the strapping on their air packs. Kenny MacDonald couldn't be with us tonight. Kenny's been very, very sick and has actually had an operation not too long ago. He wanted to be, but he wasn't able to. As a result of Captain Kenny MacDonald's actions on that night, ladies and gentlemen, recipient of the Award of Distinction, Captain Kenny MacDonald. It was September 30th, 1985. Fire crews responded to a structure fire at 45 St. Paul Street. They arrived on scene to discover a 2-story building with heavy smoke and fire. At the time, firefighter Donnie Walker was on the rescue squad. They arrived on scene to a report of a missing person on the 2nd floor. Donnie, being the robust person that he was, a jovial guy who was a consummate professional all the way, quickly got off the truck, and before lines could be deployed, realizing that the heavy smoke, the person wouldn't last very long and they would soon perish. He made his way to the 2nd floor, down a long hallway, through extreme heat and fire conditions. When he got to the door at the end of the hallway, tried to open it up, but it would only open about 3 inches. What it was there was a female who was down in behind the door. Kenny managed to get the door open and on his own cradled her up and scooped her up in his arms and made his way back out with her in his hands. When he got out, they immediately began CPR, and the lady was saved. And she actually came back to the fire station there about a month after that to thank him for what he had done. For his actions on that night, retired District Chief Don Walker is a recipient of the Award of Distinction. It was April 1st, 1995 at 23:58. Fire crews responded to a call in the area of Redhead in the Bay of Fundy for a vehicle in the water. Firefighters Doug Trentowsky and Peter Woodhouse put on Mustang life jackets, put on a tagline, and made their way out to a vehicle that they could see floating in the water. The vehicle was bobbing out as it made its way out, about 7 inches underwater, the roof, and they could still see the headlights and the taillights. Shortly after that, Engine 4 arrived on the scene, and firefighters Alexander and Shelley joined and swam out on their own. At that time, we didn't have life preservers on all of our apparatus. It was just the rescue squad. Now we carry them on all apparatus for such types of incidents. They made their way out through waves and cold. It was April. It was chilly. On the way out, hypothermia was always a consideration, and they began to lose feeling. When they finally got to the car, they could see the headlights, they could see the taillights, but they couldn't get the door open. They finally went around and they were able to get a door open, being careful all the time as the car bobbed up and down. They were afraid themselves that they were going to be trapped under it. All the time fighting time, knowing they didn't have very long before they themselves would be incapacitated. And they felt inside, and it was difficult to know what they were feeling. They couldn't tell because their hands had gone numb. They didn't know if they had grabbed a duffel bag, a blanket, or a teddy bear. And finally, they got a hold of a young woman who had been out in the car at that time for about 15 minutes and were able to get her out. They got her out, and as the car bobbed up and down in the water, they set her up on the roof because they knew they had to get a couple of breaths into her or she wasn't going to make it. So they did that. Firefighter Trentowsky, where he had the tagline on, latched onto her, and it was towed back to shore. When they got back to shore, they were all suffering from hypothermia and transported immediately to the hospital. A few months later, the lady survived, and no one knows it was because of the cold water that had helped her to survive. And they all ended up going to a big barbecue that they had, and of course she was most grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, recipients of the Award of Distinction: Firefighter Doug Trentowsky, Firefighter Peter Alexander, Lt.Peter Woodhouse, and Lt.Mike Spike Shelley.